Yeah, I have an image of Isaac blazed into my mind, actually. And it was a striking image because you see how my hair is right now, kind of sticking up and unkempt and wild. This is a bit it's a bit of a tribute to the way Isaac looked. It was a very carefree aesthetic, very comfortable, the clothes just kind of hung off him in a very comfortable way.
Yeah, he was, he certainly toward the end of his life, but even earlier, he was kind of a bit of a schlumpy elder Jew, which I don't mean in any kind of bad way.
Obviously an older Jewish gentleman from New York.
He had this gray and white kind of spindly hair, and he was balding, and that made him look Jewish. And then he had these glasses, and oh, he was so cute.
The very first time I sat next to him, I'm like, who's this weird looking old man? Like, he looks like Statler or Waldorf, one of the two grumpy old guys up on the balcony at the Muppet Show.
Isaac always wore khakis and a t-shirt that was ancient and probably falling apart, threadbare at the very least, and then the flannel shirts. I mean, I don't think I ever saw Isaac wear anything but those.
And the sort of person, when he walked in, everybody was happy to see him, and he was happy to see everybody. Really, to an unusual degree.
In some ways, I almost see him as this biblical figure on a tablet from the Old Testament or some shit like that.
He smells old, not in a bad way, because I'm probably gonna smell like that when I get old too. But it's just like, and I started thinking, he's only in his 60s. I'm in my early 50s. We're not that far separated.
Not like I don't think he had osteoporosis, but he just generally kind of didn't walk at full height. Because I bet he was actually, what was he? He was probably 5'10", 5'11", but he often kind of appeared sort of shorter.
Yeah, he seemed very comfortable in the style that he had chosen, like that he probably picked out 40, 50 years ago or something.
I'm sorry. There was never a sense that this guy is at all uncomfortable. You couldn't really picture Isaac in a suit, for example, because he would just be wearing these very soft flannel outfits and kind of khaki pants that kind of bag down a little bit. And you're a little bit jealous sometimes. He would show up here from work looking okay. Man, I wish I could just dress like that all the time.
They were very comfortable. You could tell that the flannel shirts, and the khakis were probably the most comfortable, soft clothes you could ever wear.
I was jealous of them.
Yes.
I just wanted to crawl up inside them.
But he had kind of some classic Jewish features in his nose. He had a good Jew nose, I thought.
Maybe a little clownish, but adorable.
Looked like an old man.
He looked like an old Jewish man.
Yes, well, which is what he was, but not that old. He was 65 when he passed away, which is, in this day and age, that's just unfortunate. But, he was very active all the time, always used to ride his bike all the time, and I went for a hike with him about a month ago, a 6-mile hike. He had the wire rim glasses, and I don't want to say twinkle in his eye, but it was
twinkle.
No.
Isaac and I, we shared a common love of having a good time, drinking and smoking a little bit of weed, and Isaac was always great because he'd have the tiniest little roach of a joint left, and he'd be like, "Hey, you want to go out and smoke some weed?"
We didn't call it weed, we call it reefer. Old school, old school.
So we'd have the world's smallest roach imaginable, just trying to hold it together, passing it back and forth. And it's funny because he and I had done that so many times over the years. And the last time I saw him, which was just a few days before he passed away, I'd randomly come into the Uptown, and in the daylight, I was on my way back from downtown anyway, and Isaac was here. He's the only other regular in here. We talked like old times, and he even broke out one of his Wall Street stories.
You know, even though he talked about having worked on Wall Street, he never really seemed like a Manhattanite or anything like that.
Not to pigeonhole, but there is something about being a New York Jew where they kind of tend to have relatively strong personalities as compared with people we know who come from other parts of the country. You know, maybe it's just something, the environment just causes people to want to learn to stand out certain ways.
He always liked to talk about how, when I used to work on Wall Street, and then he would go into some story. And it was always funny. I always wondered just what did Isaac exactly do on Wall Street? I think he was like an accountant or something like that. He was not a stockbroker. But every time he would say, "Man, I used to work on Wall Street," it always sort of evoked this bygone era, this sort of sense that there was a time when Isaac was on Wall Street in the big heyday of Mad Men era kind of Wall Street stuff.
He and I would talk a lot about Ithaca, and
Right.
Ithaca, New York, was very, very important to him. He
Yes.
talked about it a lot, and he always talked about it in a very happy way.
He came of age at a time during or after the 60s where there was some weird, people were back to the land, not entirely conforming to things. And I think Ithaca, which I think was he'd come from New York, he went to Ithaca to go to grad school, and he found this idyllic little community that was like heavily influenced by students.
You know, he was that kind of East Coast, smaller town sort of hippie type. Into the folk music scene and the pot and the girls and all that.
Going to Columbia and like working on Wall Street. So I felt like it was really legitimate. Like he had his criticisms of the world, but he had lived. So he wasn't just like a maniacal hippie fucking, dropout of the universe. He was actually someone who had a lot of practical experience and knowledge.
If you were to ask him what he did for a living and whether or not he was an economist, he would deny that. He'd say, "I'm a bookkeeper."
And probably the company that he worked for the most was Green Tortoise.
I know he worked for Green Tortoise forever.
We get on the freeway and they say, no cigarette smoking allowed. Everything else is. And it's pretty much the whole bus lit up. There was a honeymoon couple, so they had the back section. They were having sex loud enough for everybody here. The heater broke down. My head froze to the window. Somebody stole like a quarter pound of some dude's pot. Bus broke down. I told Isaac this, and he just laughed. He's like, stuff that happened all the time. Did you get late? And I'm like, no. Really? You didn't get late on a Green Tortoise bus?
Oh, okay, he was. Okay, so 90, well, that helps for me to, so yeah, midnight, about 20 years ago, you started coming here and he was already hanging out here.
They were similar in age and older than us, and they were the old school crew in the bar, and we came in and we were the newbies, and we became friends with them and learned their bickering habits, which is pretty awesome. Like, oh, Isaac would always complain that Scott walked too fast because Isaac liked to mosey and Scott liked to hike quickly. And then Isaac got his heart worked on and Scott didn't.
Well, he was always a guy who was out walking around, exercising, riding his bicycle, doing all these things. So he was an active guy. But then the heart condition caught up with him. And so in the last years, he really got, he had this more beleaguered sort of look.
He wasn't like hiking. He would like kind of slump around the streets a bit.
I know that he started to really eat better. He mentioned that he mentioned a couple times that one of the things he thought had closed up the arteries in his heart was eating all-you-can-eat Chinese food around the corner that was, greasy and fried, and he had given all that up and started to eat really, really healthy, and he really doubled down on his, working out. He started hiking more and of course he went to the Esprit Park all the time.
And I remember giving him shit about his health too, because he had to go in the hospital and he didn't really want anybody to know. And then I found out once he was released, it was like, you selfish bastard. Why didn't, I would have come and hung out with you. Well, I didn't want sympathy. I wouldn't have given you sympathy. I would have given you shit. I would have, brought you food that was bad for you against the nurse's advice or whatever.
If I remember right, his favorite meal was, this was according to Scott, was Sloppy Joe's. And every year at Isaac's birthday, Scott would make him Sloppy Joe.
Right.
I visited him in the hospital, and he was, it was too soon, I think. Like, maybe not too soon for Scott to visit him, but probably too soon for me to visit him. I mean, we were friends, but he was still very, really delicate shape, and I remember I brought him a balloon, and he was pretty cranky still, and in pain and on drugs, and he was like, "Oh, I don't like balloons."
The appetizing plate in this particular place were quite large, and I couldn't come close to finish him, and Isaac just wolfed it all down. He was a hearty eater. Must have had a high metabolism rate.
Did he pick up the tab for that?
Hey, I offered when he was in the hospital. I said, "Hey, I'm the TV queen. I'll come here and sit and watch TV with you, and I'll show you what's good on TV." And he was not interested at all. He didn't want to watch TV at all. So, yeah, you must be pretty anti-TV if you'd rather sit and watch a balloon deflate rather than watch TV.
I have on my list here, do not ask people to do Isaac's laugh.
I don't think it would be possible to do it because
let's say it was gleeful.
It was gleeful.
Yeah, it wasn't a Santa Claus ho ho ho, but
there was a real mirth to it.
Yes, but also it could be irritating to some people. People would comment on it. I know the bartenders at the Uptown would comment on his laugh, and that you could tell that he was when the laugh came on full force, that he was in his cups.
There was a personality we'd call Drunk Isaac who would, when he was drinking, he had the cackle.
If one has heard his laugh, I can't even describe it. I've heard over the last week people trying to describe it. And the funny thing to me is what people are, there's disagreement on, "Hey, Robbie, we're doing an interview."
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
It was the way his mouth looked, the way his eyes kind of got up and lit. Yeah, see, I don't even know why the beer's foaming up.
He could inflict it like a weapon at times, He really could. He could laugh so loud and in your ear and right in your face. And it could be infuriating, and also just really hit your spine, almost like nails on a chalkboard.
The funny thing about Isaac's laugh, when people have been talking about it, is whether maniacal is allowed in the description.
But then, if you made some kind of offhand comment that you thought was funny and he thought was funny too, he could laugh and he could make you feel like the funniest person in the world.
His truly unique laugh, and it would just burst out.
Can you do an impression of Isaac's laugh? Can you try?
No, I cannot.
I don't think anyone could.
No, many have tried and often failed.
And it would be punctuated with a the cackle. I mean, I can't do it justice, really.
I've tried replicating it at home in the shower.
Isaac had a nice nasal kind of chortle. Like he'd be like, kind of like that. It would go up in his nose. I can't really imitate him necessarily so well.
That's the Isaac laugh. The more drunk he got, the more loud and delicious that laugh became.
Well, when he was I'd say most times you never found it. If he was in a social setting, you never found him brooding.
Not at all.
He was always he always loved being around folks.
He was
and
one of
just,
the best
and it would
conversationalists in the
bring-
bar.
Yes, he was. Yes, and it would just bring his spirit up and his conversation up.
If you took regular Isaac in his sort of serious discussion mode and you amplified it and made it more smiley and happy, and then you added a cackle.
A couple beers with Isaac Beer. And,
That's right. You knew it'd be worthwhile.
Ike, the rabbi.
Imre was the one who dubbed Isaac the Rabbi, which of course was an ironic nickname because Isaac would have nothing to do with going to the synagogue or, I don't know if he ever did any of that stuff back when he was 13 or something.
So that was his nickname, the rabbi, or rabbi.
His brother was a rabbi, but he was not a rabbi.
Rabbi means teacher. Did he ever teach you anything? Did you ever learn anything from Isaac?
No.
I don't think I ever did either.
He was usually pretty much a happy drunk, but which is not which is not to say it might not be annoying, but it was a happy drunk, which is certainly better than sad drunk or belligerent drunk or anything like that.
Then in a way,
we could go on all night about whether he taught us anything.
But he did. I came to this conclusion. What he taught me was that. So here's this guy, and he seemed really, really, really happy.
Yeah. Right. Yep. And it wore off.
No, but
it wore off on you, is what I'm saying.
It wore off on you,
yeah. Okay.
But he attained that happiness.
So there's one time when Isaac was like so drunk, and the bartender was changing a keg, and he came behind the bar and grabbed a bottle of Jameson and filled us all up, and got in trouble. And Scott was really pissed off at him. He was a terrible Scrabble player.
Isaac would spend 20 minutes when it was his turn to play, and then he'd end up and he'd just play like 2 letters. He would play of or something, and he would block up the board. So not only that was his favorite thing to do, was he would, even if he had the letters to make a good word that was long, and he all he wanted to ever do was block up the board and play 2-letter words and really close the board down, and he would take 20 minutes to do it. So after a while, we told him he wasn't allowed to play anymore. And he always thought that was hilarious, that he got kicked out of the Scrabble game.
He owes me $30.
Fucking cunt. Of course he does. So the Jack London thing.
But this is what he'd do when he'd walk around town: is he'd go into a bookstore, before the demise of the bookstore, and find used books, and he loved the history of San Francisco books.
And he was a guy, he would come in here, and he, had just read and had just read the whole book about one of the big California pioneers, and he'd be like, "It's amazing," talking about, how they built the dams or how they did the waterworks.
I still have a bunch of books that he loaned me.
Right.
Yeah, they're all really good books too. They're all about California labor history and fucking, not just shit that's interesting as a historical footnote, but shit that's interesting as it's fucking relevant to current events.
Most recently, in the last couple of months, he'd been reading some stuff about Jack London, so he would kind of go into weird detail about, certain arcane aspects of Jack London's life, things like that.
The last 3 months of fucking Isaac's life, Isaac was all about fucking Jack London, man. And Jack London's fucking great. All the stories are great. The California history aspect of it is fucking great. I mean, there's just such a rich, source of material.
Recently, he went on a Jack London kick.
Oh, right. Yes. He was very mercurial about his attitude about Jack London.
But he after an hour of him ranting at you about fucking Jack London, he'd go, you know what though? He's fucking racist against the fucking Chinese. He's a fucking racist, misogynist, fucking product of his era, and fuck all those people, and blah blah blah.
So he was always he loved to sort of rip on the foibles of liberal San Francisco and liberal California, although he himself was quite liberal. I mean, he was definitely nobody's idea of a conservative in any way.
He was really critical of ideologies and people that have like an easy line to tell people, you know. And yeah, he's really critical, man. He didn't like phonies, you know.
A little bit curmudgeonly might be a word that might come to mind in terms of how people think of a certain type of figure. He was a little curmudgeonly.
So he was really interested in social justice and making the world a better place, but he didn't buy any bullshit, you know. And he would call people out on it too. He'd listen thoughtfully and respectfully, and then, you know, once it was ready, he would tell you why you were fucking full shit. And that was awesome. Yeah, we need more of that.
Isaac had a way of being brutally honest and telling something that maybe the polite person would just sweep under the rug.
It's all about what you can fucking prove, you know, what's real. And Isaac was on a quest always for that. And we got to share in that and keep that.
After Scott died, there was a hanger-on guy that no one had seen ever. No one even knew this guy. And all of a sudden he was coming in all the time pretending like, well, maybe not pretending, but talking about Scott. But everything he said about Scott was more or less not right. You know, like we who knew Scott were always a little like, oh, that's not what. And Isaac just laid into him and was, I think you're a tourist. You're just trying to find somewhere to hang out and you don't belong here and you don't know Scott and what you're saying about Scott offends me because I know Scott and you don't. You're just a tourist. Hanger on. And it was beautiful.
Anything that I said, anything about what I read, wrote, heard, whatever, he was like, the favorite thing was like, he would be like, oh, this is why I think that's bullshit.
He was, you know, he was this, you know, just champion of the downtrodden, but in a really sincere and straightforward way. Not that he was off, you know, railing against the banks or any of that sort of political stuff, but rather, you know, he just had a heart for the people that he saw around the city, the people that he saw on the streets.
We were there as the fucking bomb-throwing weirdos or whatever, and it was important to have somebody around so when you get done being chased around by the cops and you're like, oh, we're saving the world. You come in there, I'm gonna relax and have a drink. It's good to have somebody be like, all that shit is bullshit. You're a fucking phony. Everything you did is useless. You gotta fucking step your game up, you know? And that keeps people from being lazy, useless hippies, which is fucking, you know, which is our culture. Like, we're lazy, useless hippies. It's not okay to just like be comfortable with that.
I never, you know, like he would always say he was, you know, for free markets and he wasn't a collectivist. I don't think he ever really had a very consistent worldview. I don't think he ever bothered. He didn't, you know, that wasn't what he cared about.
It never turns into 1984, you know. It never turns into fucking Big Brother kind of.
What would Isaac think of this? We're sitting here talking about it. What do we think? What would he say?
He had this very egalitarian manner. He treated everybody the same. Somebody, you know, was wealthy, somebody was poor, you know, he would just never, you know, he just didn't care.
Those are the people that you want to listen to, and he was one of those people.
Love you, Isaac. Love you very much.
And I'm gonna read every motherfucking Jack London book. I'm gonna fucking shove Jack London up people's ass.
He's a racist.
He was, but fuck that.
I'm really missing my Jewish Uncle Isaac, who I always referred to as Mean Uncle Isaac. And every time I'd walk into the bar and see him, I'd go, oh, Mean Uncle Isaac. And he'd get that big smile on his face and cackle, Mean Uncle Isaac. And people would look at us weird as an inside joke because not only was he not my uncle, but he wasn't me. And I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about him because he was one of the nicest people I've ever had the privilege of meeting.
And that's what I'm starting to realize, and that's heartbreaking, is that I'm never going to run into him again here. And I consider him a great friend. We were friends for 10 years, and yet it was a rare occasion that we went and had lunch. But it was just serendipitous that we'd meet and chat for a few hours randomly. And each time I've come in since he's passed, I realize that I'm not going to run into him again, and I get really sad. And
Isaac was one of the most beautiful and lovely people that I always felt so lucky to run into if I showed up and he was here, man. Isaac, I am so fucking pissed off tonight, right? Because like I got here and I see that Isaac's picture is on the pillar, and I thought, well, of course, Isaac should be recognized. He should always be recognized. He's an amazing creature. And then I thought, holy fucking shit. The only people who end up getting their pictures on the wall and on the pillar are people we lament their loss. And so I found out tonight that Isaac has died. And I feel the loss. I feel the loss.
Isaac was walking across, and we parked. And as we parked, I saw Isaac. And he's like, "Hey, Robbie, how you doing?" He's like, "Hey, you going to work out?" He's like, "Yeah." And then he asked about the baby, my friend Sasha's baby, and we went into the shade, and I showed him pictures of the baby on my phone, and he was super happy because he was one of the few people that knew she was pregnant because he worked out at the park all the time. And then I said, "So you're gonna go work out?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I'll see you later." And he died during that workout. So I think I'm the last person that he knew that he talked to. He might have said help to somebody, but love the man.
I saw someone updated a status on Facebook. I forgot who. And somebody had updated the status, and I looked at it, I'm like, oh my God. I forgot exactly what it said, but it didn't say Isaac's dead, but it said something that made me realize, oh my God, Isaac's dead. And it put a bit of an additional pall over the events of Saturday, which was also going to be a celebration of Scott Ellsworth, our other friend who died just a year ago. So in some ways, it was good timing. we were all together.
And family doesn't mean blood. Family means who you allow to have in your family. It's little things like that. And one part of my extended family is gone.
Where I was when I found out that he died was I was doing a hike out in the woods and doing a loop, and I was up at the top of the loop at the peak that I was going. It wasn't a peak, it was a hill.
It was a mighty peak.
I was on Everest when it happened.
Scaled the last inch. And the snow was...
But at any rate, the reason I'm saying I was at the top of a hill is because I had reception. In the valley, I couldn't hear anything. And Shay, bartender here, called me, and she was just crying. And she's like, "Are you sitting down?" I'm like, "Well, no, there's no place to sit down here." But
And that's the beautiful thing, I think, is that he wasn't hooked up to tubes. He wasn't into bed. He was having fun and living his life the moment he died. Cheers.
Can we cheer it? Can we toast?
Whatever you want to do.
To Isaac Beer.
We came here just
He was
to
and still
drink a
is
toast
a
to
rad ass
Isaac.
dude. And we love you.
so So that wraps it up. He's in the ground. And God bless the man.
I miss him. Isaac.
To Isaac, to Ike, to the rabbi.
Cheers, Isaac.
Cheers, Isaac. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
You know, wherever the hell he is. Yeah.